Welcome to IDentities Umhlobo, your TV program that talks about all issues that pertain to us, the social issues, economic issues, and current issues. Today we're talking about an important issue to our country as well, an issue that we've been all experiencing, the issue of toxicity of elections. We've seen a lot of violence around us, violence and physical violence, and for those online on Facebook, on Twitter, on WhatsApp, we've seen shocking videos circulating, shocking things being said. And to discuss this, I have Tafadzwa, who is from ZanuPF, who's representing the young people and generally of ZanuPF at large. Welcome, Tafadzwa, to this show.
Thank you very much, and hello, viewers.
Thank you. I have Linda Masarira from MDC. Welcome, Linda, on the show.
Thank you very much, Nyari. How are you, viewers?
Great. Linda, I want to start with you. A while ago, we saw the nasty videos of you and Dr. Kupe and other members from your political party being shoved around, things thrown at you, people singing derogatory messages about you being women in this election. How has been the environment for you? And we're also seeing things on social media, Facebook, WhatsApp, Twitter going on.
It shows the high level of intolerance that we still have in Zimbabwe. We have been trying since 1999 to ensure that we actually democratize Zimbabwe. But it becomes worrisome when opposition starts manifesting itself into acts of violence, and which is totally unexpected.
Would it be true, though, that this has been ZanuPF? Because I was thinking that was it not so easy to just always blame ZanuPF? And now that you can't control it, we've got social media, because we've had a lot of elections where manifestations of violence could have also been in the opposition party, such as MDC. Was it not always easy to just put it on ZanuPF? Honestly, things cannot just change suddenly in the MDC, that suddenly, because Changachirere is no more, then we suddenly see this.
What I would like to say is, there has been violence in the MDC.
Right.
Since Trudy Stevenson has been attacked at Harvest House, Tendai BT, Elton Mangoma, and everyone else. But I actually see the violence actually manifesting instead of it diminishing, which is very worrisome, especially when we're going towards elections, where all opposition parties and even I've had the ruling party actually calling for peaceful elections this year. We need to get to those levels of maturity as citizens, as political parties, and as political party leaders. We are the ones who should start preaching the message of peace, of tolerance to our supporters. It is not enough just to go and paste a statement on social media that stop doing violent acts and etc. etc. Every political party leader should go down to their members and tell them to desist from violence, from derogatory statements, name calling, and sexist statements. And charity begins at home. Those political party leaders should also stop violating women in their speeches at their rallies, because the buck stops with the leaders.
I'll come back to you, Linda. Tafadzwa, we heard what Linda just said about political party leadership. We've had elements in the ruling party where women are called derogatory words by party leaders in your party. For instance, Comrade Chinotimba, I know he called the former First Lady things that we don't want to see in this country. What is your position as a country in as far as making sure that these elections are not toxic? By toxic, we're talking about, our children opening the radio, the TV, going online, seeing nasty things from political parties.
Okay, firstly, let me categorically make this clear. One thing that you cannot take away from ZanuPF, it is the strides that the president, His Excellency Comrade Emmerson Mnangagwa, who is also our party candidate to this election, as well. He has been very categorical in demanding for free and fair elections that are violent-free. Right. And he has always been very consistent in calling for non-violent conduct non-violent participation in this election. And he has been calling for collaboration from all political parties. And I'm quite very much happy that we in ZanuPF, and particularly the Youth League, we have accepted the presidency call, and we are going by it, and that is why the Youth League and even the president himself on every platform, be it international platform or rallies or party forums, he has always been very consistent in calling for non-violent conduct. So I think we need to give him heads up around that. But when I come to the question that you talked about, Comrade Chinotimba, of course, addressing the former First Lady, that is Grace Mugabe, in derogatory terms. In fact, in particular, he called perhaps something. Okay, I will not talk about that. But let me be very clear on this, Nyarai. You will be very much aware that it is the former First Lady who had a penchant of using that derogatory language. And I'm not saying she needed to be reciprocated about. Okay. She needed to be reciprocated. But I think even at the time that statement was said, it was at the height of overzealousness around the November Revolution that was still in its consummation stages. So certainly, of course, I pardon Comrade Chinotimba for using that language. But you see, he's also a war veteran. Those people who had been water cannoned, those people who had been baton stick, those people who had been, treated and called all sorts of names by that cabal that is for. So it was quite unfortunate that he ended up using those words. But I think it is the First Lady, the former First Lady, who wanted to use that.
Tafadzwa, there are two things here. I have a problem with us saying, because you were saying that because he had been pouring water on as the war veterans and stuff, but they are the same people who were singing praises of the former. So I think we need not forget that the same Comrade Chinotimba would then go into parliament, and if we questioned him soon after they were, water cannons had landed on them, you would have sung praises for the same.
Okay, what I'm saying is, I'm not trying to excuse what Comrade Chinotimba said, but I've located the circumstances that were ensuing in the country,
and
a lot of that language was
not
used. In fact, what I'm saying is that let's come closer home. That language of calling people names and using vulgar nomenclatures to refer to political leaders was just used a couple of days ago on my fellow colleague Linda Masarira, and perhaps Dr. Kube, who is the leader of the MDC T, that she is part of. And now the question, which is, in fact, the $1 million question now is the consistency at which a particular party is using the same, the same language. But may I also take you back that it did not start there. The penchant of the MDC T to react and behave violently is now well documented, especially after the death of Morgan.
Is it not also true that in the ZanuPF it's happening, Linda?
When it comes to violence is in ZanuPF and in the MDC T. So going forward, we actually have to be ensuring how we are going to stop violence from those who are perpetrating violence. We have seen ZanuPF primaries mad with a lot of violence, extreme violence to be precise. So when we want to talk about violence, I don't think we have to be sugarcoating it or trying to window dress that this side is less violent or more violent than the other. When it's violence, whether it's verbal, it's physical, emotional, or abusive, it's still violence.
I'll come back to you, Linda, and I'm going to say that this is so important. Join us in the next segment on identities, and we continue the discussion. Welcome back to your program, Identities Umhlobo, your program that talks about your social, economic, and political issues. Today we're talking about an issue that is really bothering our country, the issue of toxicity of elections as we are building up to the forthcoming elections. I want to go back to Linda, where you raised important issues about how we should stop making it a ZanuPF or an MDC issue, but probably a citizens issue, a culture issue. Please continue.
Okay, why I was raising this those sentiments is because the violence is usually perpetrated by the vulnerable who are manipulated by political party leaders.
Right.
So the buck stops with the citizen. Okay. He's the one who should stop being manipulated for Bronco. He's the one who should stop being manipulated for marijuana or free drinks or a plate of sadza. Zimbabweans should appreciate that they are very important and should refuse to be used to mete out political violence. So when the citizen stops this political leaders from manipulating them, then we'll have our first step into achieving a peaceful election.
Dr. Manyika, do we have something that holds you as leaders accountable or penalized in our politics? To say when we see political leaders fanning violence, fanning derogatory, sexist, chauvinistic messages leading their flock, how do we hold you leaders accountable to stopping violence in our nation?
Yeah, you know, we've built a culture of impunity, and unfortunately, we've also built processes and structures of impunity, and people get away with things that they should never get away with. There is absolutely no justification for the things that we heard, the other day, calling people names, those derogatory names, calling women, the names that they were called. That's absolutely unpardonable. What I would also love to say, though, is that we have to be careful not to tame the political process so that we are not telling the truth. Because, we have to be able to separate those things. The things that are being said against women, all those, they're totally unjustifiable. But we have to call out the mistakes and the things that we know that happened even in the past that are unacceptable. Solving the problems of our country requires truth-telling. And when I say truth-telling, what we saw that Linda and Dr. Coupe were subjected to, that's not truth-telling. That's just being crass and being vile. And, we must find a way to actually make sure that leaders don't get away with that.
How do we hold you leaders of political parties?
Right. Well, so here's the thing. It's such a big problem, and I wish there was a simple solution. I wish we had leaders who would actually say, I have said this, because I've said this, I'm going to step down. We have not really, our political processes and our selection processes for leaders and so on, people do whatever they want. I just wish we had that kind of culture and with leaders with that kind of integrity. So we have our work cut out for us as a population. We have to start electing leaders right now at council level, at MP level, at presidential level, who have that kind of integrity and who can hold themselves accountable. And then also, I've said this over and over again, citizens have to recognize that they don't just have the power to elect, they have the power to recall. Yes, absolutely.
I actually concur with what Dr. Manyika is saying. One of the tragedies we've always had in Zimbabwe is an inactive citizen. I always go back to the citizen. Since time immemorial, people have just gone to vote. They don't even know who they voted for. And that is why we are in the quagmire that we are in. Now, as we're going into the elections, I'm encouraging every registered voter to do a background check on the candidate they want to vote for. What kind of background does that person have? Are they able to deliver? Because we've got a crisis in our political parties, from the ruling party to most opposition parties, where the candidates are actually appointed or go through programmed primary elections to win them without the necessary merit that is needed to execute, whether it's the parliamentary duty or the council duty. We've had Mayor Manyenyeni saying it over and over again that most of the councillors cannot even read an audited statement. So going forward, it is critically important for every Zimbabwean who wants transformation, who wants a better life, to ensure that they vote for the right candidate, not just for a certain political party, but look at the candidate. Does that candidate have merit? What is that candidate offering? And what is the message of that candidate?
What are we calling for the government or citizens or ZEC to do around the toxicity that we're seeing online? Yes, we have seen even our leaders have let us down. What do we do, Dr. Manyika?
Yeah, it goes beyond what ZEC can do. It goes beyond what government can do. It is a responsibility of all of us. I was thinking about this, even some of the things that you see on social media. The young generation in this country needs to understand that some of the things that they do on social media will filter over into actual active violence and so on. It's not just, it triggers something. So, it's broader than what they can do. All of us, church leaders, political leaders, parents, all of us need to really be concerned about this, because it's not a good thing considering the outcome that we want. We want an effective government that will deal with the real problems that all of us have.
Dr. Manyika, amazing stuff. Linda, as we close the segment, what is your message to the government, to ZEC, to the citizens?
My message is we have to be tolerant of each other and our different political ideologies and inclinations. we will never think the same. Even children that were born with the same mother and same father will always have their differences. But what is critically important is to find ourselves as Zimbabweans and to have one shared national vision so that we can grow our economy and enhance sustainable human development for every Zimbabwean. Zimbabweans have suffered enough, but going forward, it is the time for us to hold hands together, united in our diversity, to ensure that we rebuild Zimbabwe together for the sake of posterity and the future of our children.
Dr. Manyika.
Same thing. I really believe, that we have to develop this unique social contract as a people. And, our consideration must be the problems that we have, the extent of those problems. We shouldn't waste time hating each other and so on. We must debate on the basis of substance, point out the truth, expose to the people of Zimbabwe what we would do in the event that we're elected, and forget about all these other things. And, it's easier said than done, but we should all really play our part in terms of that.
You had as citizens for yourself. The ball is in our court to accept or decline things that we see that are not to build ourselves. What are you doing to make these elections free and fair? What are you doing to end toxicity of elections? What are you doing to build in the new dispensation that we want? Until next time, join us in the next segment. Welcome back, viewers, to your program IDentities Umhlobo. Today we were discussing the toxicity of the elections environment as we are heading towards elections in our country, toxicity, online toxicity, even with the violence that we've been seeing across the political parties, inter and intra political parties. And I continue with Tafadzwa. Tafadzwa, you heard what people were saying. Linda earlier on was mentioning and commenting about the violence that was maybe witnessed during the primary elections within the ruling party. What do we do moving forward?
Maybe the first thing that I need to correct from what she said is the use of the word extreme cases of violence. Because honestly, when you say extreme cases of violence, you would be perhaps suggesting that there were people who were injured and there are people who were hospitalized out of that, but those cases never happened. We had challenges, just like any political organizations, of course, in the conduct of our primary elections. But that there was extreme violence was neither here nor there. But then secondly, I'm also quite very much happy to say that as a party, we have taken strong reprimanding procedures and processes in order to ensure that we militate against such incidences happening again. I'm quite very much happy on this on this platform to say that there is no one who can say he has never heard His Excellency, the candidate of ZanuPF and the President of the Republic, calling on all people across political parties to respect this election and try by all means to conduct themselves in a non-violent manner. And we in ZanuPF are trying to the best of our ability to live by the President's statement. And that is why even the few cases that you have referred to, which could have been perhaps violent here and there, the part has taken strong reprimanding processes, and that is why some of those who were the culprits were arrested, and some of them were fired even from ministerial positions. For standing on the wrong side of the president's pronouncement. So we are quite very happy about it. The only unfortunate thing is that we are not seeing a reciprocation of the message that President Mnangagwa is saying, particularly from opposition groups and the MDC T in particular. In fact, the MDC T is the party that is now playing a leading role in becoming a violent, in causing violence ahead of these elections. You are quite very much aware about what happened in Buhere to Womanikwa village when, on the occasion of the burial of their former president, who is now let may his soul rest in peace, Morgan Chankrai, people were almost bending a heart. The same repeated itself in Blaawai, where people were left with fractured skulls and broken limbs by the MDC T. I'm particularly referring to those who were affected in the MDC Kupe side. So I'm saying there is supposed to be a reciprocation from all political parties to complement the president's message that let us have non-violent elections.
So I think I want to come to you, Glanis. Thank you for joining us on this program. And say you are representing the civil society. You're also representing women's constituency, as the young women, especially from Zimbabwe. How has been the issues of violence as far as young women are concerned, and as the civil society, what are you also doing to make sure that the named political parties don't continue fanning the violence and objectifying women in the process?
Thank you, Nyari. It's quite sad for me that we are having this conversation as we are nearing an election, just
Right.
2 months away. I would have been happy if we were able to have this conversation in a more sustained way.
Right.
Because my fear is we are going to talk about this,
Right.
well, perhaps and influence the next election. And so you see already the understanding is violence only happens as we near the election. And therefore, as we respond to it from a civil society perspective, but also in terms of inculcating a culture of peace and non-violence, we sort of like then detach those aspects from our day-to-day lives post-election. So unfortunately, I mean, we have to talk about it now,
Yeah.
but I just want to say, even as I interpret the question around toxicity of elections in
Right.
Zimbabwe, for me as a young woman, I'm seeing it more as, you know, one of the things that young women are actually forced to live by.
Right.
So violence, it starts in my home.
Right.
As I'm stepping out, you know, and leaving perhaps my partner or my family,
Right.
and say I want to go into the political arena. Already there's a lot of violence. There's a lot of questioning around
Right.
my normalcy, you know, what we term a normal girl in our African society. Then when I then go into that public arena, then comes the politically motivated violence that we receive and experience
Right.
from our own political parties, but also even inter-political parties. So there is a sustained culture of communication around the need to marginalize, discriminate, and violate the girl child and make sure that they don't get into politics, right? So as we then come into this broader conversation, the question to me is, we are talking about this violence now. Is it really just about the election? Or we are saying our understanding of women in society, our understanding of girls, are people that we always need to violate?
Right.
And so as we engage in political processes, we then focus more on the objectification of women. You know, name calling around women.
Right.
It's even using hate speech, you know, language that naturally just pushes women away from the political arena.
Right.
It's this internal and external conduct that we do as we engage in political activities. So to me, the issue around toxicity of elections goes beyond just this particular election.
Right.
But I'm glad to say, as we talk about it now, let's make this a space to say we need to have a more sustained, progressive dialogue and conversation around how we tackle issues of violence, particularly against women, which then, you know, acts as one of the inhibiting factors for them to participate effectively. And let's talk about this, of course, as an issue of trying to just generate a new culture, a new way of thinking, a new way of doing things in as far as we see issues around violence and what country we want to see going forward.
Right. And I think as we conclude this, Glanis, what is it, the one word that you'd give to the man who's listening or watching, to the woman, to the young man, to the young woman, and also to the leaders? Because we've seen, I think part of what has been, the discussion has been, we're seeing violence being perpetrated from the leaders and going down and being tolerant on the ground.
It's two-way now, on your last point, where, because this is the understanding that is there in our society,
Right.
where we have different views,
Right.
we are quick to use, you know, violence as a way of solving those differences. So to me, I think it's both ways. It's the citizens who have mastered this culture of violence. And then we have these leaders who allow a culture of impunity. So going forward, the bigger question to me, or the challenge rather, is to citizens. I think we need to stop and start questioning ourselves in terms of how we are seeing our role as citizens in the political arena. If we believe that we have a role in bringing transformation that we want to see in our country, then the next we need to understand that the next person equally has the same role and responsibility. Therefore, our differences in how this transformation can be brought about should not be a justification or a reason to cause violence. So going forward, my encouragement is even with women, I mean, we need to be clear that the issue is not about a woman being abused or a man abusing her. It's actually both ways, because as women, sometimes in the process, as we engage with it, we tend to also even use violence against each other or even amongst ourselves. So we need to understand that we need to have a whole, transformational way of seeing things and how we conduct ourselves when we engage in the political arena.
Thank you very much, Glanis. Briefly, as we conclude, what can we say to our political leaders and our members in the politics in terms of ending violence?
Reciprocate. You must reciprocate what the president is saying. He's the only leader, Comrade Mnangagwa, who is outstanding in calling for non-violent elections. The others are not reciprocating the message. The others are not calling for their supporters to stop violence. In fact, they are creating quasi-violent institutions like the Vanguard that is always at Harvest House to harass opponents, to harass even intra-party, people that have differences with them. That is why we are saying even intra-party violence must be stopped, because it has the capabilities and penchants to go out of the party itself. It has the capability of getting outside. So we must have very strong internal institutions to stop intra-party violence so that it does not have spillover effects. So that is why we are proud ourselves in ZanuPF. We've managed to do that. Let us have non-violent elections.
We heard it from the guests. Others think that in their party they have done enough or they're doing enough. But I think as a country we are calling on all political parties, all major parties, to make sure that they put in place measures that we never hear another derogatory message to any woman again. By inter-party, we're talking about intra-party, rather, we're talking about the violence within a party. We are saying enough of that. And we do not want to continue, shoving the responsibility of violence from one party to another. What we want as citizens is a country where there is no violence. So from this show, Identities Umhlobo, it's bye for now. See you in the next episode.